What's going on, guys? Welcome back to my Friday Night SmackDown audio review for December 9, 2022. I am Graham G.S. Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great weekend so far. Bit of a decent show of SmackDown on Friday. I thought last week's show was a bit stronger. They are advertising a very stacked show, a super stacked SmackDown for next Friday night. I believe in 2 weeks on the 23rd, it's going to be a tape show due to the holiday because they would be flying out on Christmas Eve. So they will be live on the 30th. We found out earlier on Friday via Variety. And then WWE officially announced it soon after. John Cena is going to be on SmackDown on December 30th. So let the speculation begin. What will he have in store for SmackDown in 3 weeks' time? My immediate thought, as it probably was for many of you, that he's going to announce his entry into the Royal Rumble match. Now, it is worth noting the show is taking place in Tampa. From what I understand, I know Cena lived in Tampa for the longest time. Unless he moved, I'm pretty sure he still lives there. So it's probably just convenient for him to be at the show. A lot like with Kurt Angle tonight, or not tonight, but on this show. Kurt Angle was on the show. They were in Pittsburgh. I don't know if he still lives in Pittsburgh or whatever, but it was his birthday, and it kind of worked out perfectly with him being on the show. I doubt he's on the show every week. Kurt Angle and Cena are two very different things. Angle's not coming back for one more match. Cena absolutely could be. The timing's just interesting because it's mere weeks out from the Rumble. They're going to want to add as much star power to that match as possible. And there's already been rumors in recent weeks that Cena is going to be at WrestleMania 39 against probably someone like an Austin Theory or another Austin in Stone Cold Steve Austin. Now, that being said, it's very possible he enters into the Rumble, but it's also worth noting as well that the last time we saw Cena on TV 6 months ago, which I think before that we hadn't seen him on TV probably since SummerSlam in 2021, so he really hasn't made many appearances at all in the last year or so on WWE. It is worth noting that the last time we saw him on TV in June, yeah, he was around for a purpose. This isn't really like when he came back in June, it was for his grand 20-year anniversary of his WWE debut on the exact anniversary, which was great. He was on that show and he was all over the show, cut a promo, all that other sort of stuff, celebrated with the crowd. And we all kind of thought it would plant the seeds for something at SummerSlam. He was not at SummerSlam. We did not see Cena again after that. They did not do an angle. He just cut a promo, and that was it. Didn't close the show. But again, that was advertised as a celebration of Cena's career. This is not advertised really as anything. But then again, we've also seen Cena come back right before the Rumble before. Maybe in 2018, 2019. He was in the Rumble in 2018. I remember him being in that Rumble. That was a great Rumble. 2019, he was in it he was back around that time as well, around the holidays. And I think he was supposed to be in the Rumble and storyline. I don't know if he was ever actually supposed to be in it, but they were advertising him. They pulled him out like a week or two before due to an injury in the storyline. It was never addressed again, and he wasn't actually in the match. And he only came back for a couple matches on TV. Cena's such an attraction at this point, even compared to 3 or 4 years ago. I wouldn't bring him back to have a match on fucking TV like the following week. It's either the Rumble or bust. So I don't want to get too excited that Cena might be in the Rumble. I don't think he's going to win the Rumble. I don't think he should win the Rumble, obviously. We have a whole Rock dilemma to deal with right now, and Cody Rhodes is hopefully on his way back. But we'll see. That is worth noting. Cena will be on SmackDown in 3 weeks. Looking forward to that. The holiday show in 2 weeks probably won't be anything of note. I assume they tape 2 SmackDowns next week, which is what they did last year in Chicago, I think on the 17th. And they've done that before. They've done that a lot in recent months when they go over to Saudi Arabia. They'll tape the Friday SmackDown right before the pay-per-view the week before. They did it before Clash, and they did it before Saudi about a month ago. I assume they do it with next week's show as well. They'll tape the 23rd SmackDown after next week. But I'll just mention it. For next week, we got Roman Reigns coming back for the first time since Survivor Series, since the Bloodline won the War Games main event. Roman Reigns will be on the show. Sami Zayn is teased to be getting a makeover via Jey Uso. Jey Uso's not given the makeover, but he did say, show up looking nice, trim your beard, cut your hair. I was thinking they would save that for when he inevitably goes babyface, but it sounds like they might do it for next week. I would love to have that visual of the messy-haired Sami Zayn getting the shit kicked out of him by the Bloodline, but listen, if he's cutting the beard and the hair next week, I'm not complaining. Not a moment too soon. Sami needs the fucking... I know it's part of his gimmick and whatnot, but he said for the longest time, the whole unkempt look. He told Stone Cold Steve Austin this on the podcast earlier this year, that he does it on purpose because it's part of the character. And when it's not part of the character coming up soon, when he inevitably goes babyface, it's going to look weird. So I'm glad he's getting a makeover, or at least so it seems. So that's happening next week. Do we get the Bloodline beatdown of Sami Zayn next week? They will be in Chicago, and it's also, again, it was a year ago on SmackDown. I should bring this up. On December 17th, also in Chicago. right before the holidays. Roman Reigns fired Paul Heyman on that show. It was a major development. He Superman punched him, whatever, in a fantastic angle. Do we get something similar next week? That's the real key here. I don't know. We got that coming up among other matches that I'll mention here in a moment. But the Usos were on this show defending their undisputed WWE Tag Team titles against the Brawling Brutes, that being Sheamus and Butch. It was supposed to be Sheamus and Drew McIntyre. Drew McIntyre mentioned in Monday's Raw, or before Monday's Raw via Twitter, that he's not currently medically cleared. I don't know what injury he's dealing with, but apparently it's not too serious, because obviously he was in the War Games main event. But not only that, he is said to be back in time for the MSG house show in a couple of weeks, the day after Christmas, which is going to be a SmackDown exclusive show, because I know they always do the shows after the day after Christmas. I've gone to at least 2 or 3 of them in recent years. They're a lot of fun. The thing with this show, though, is that it falls on a Monday, so it's only going to have Raw, or rather just SmackDown people there, and no Raw people, so that's a bit of a bummer. But anyway, so Drew should be back soon. Butch replaced him. Did not really take away from the match quality at all. This was a great match. Definitely better than the Usos. I don't want to say surprisingly, but Riddle and Owens were a good team. And that was a good TV match. I thought this was better. This got more time. I felt like some of the near falls were better as well. I did not think for a second. I mean, there's always the chance they could switch the titles on a whim, but I thought there was more of a chance of the Brawling Brutes becoming champions here days after the Usos already defended the belts on Raw than Riddle and Owens on Monday's Raw. But this was really good stuff. Butch was pinned via a 1D from the Usos. Sheamus was held back by Sami Zayn. I continue to hope that Sheamus is either added or is the flat-out opponent for Roman Reigns at the Royal Rumble. I'm not getting my hopes up, and I can't really make much more of a case for Sheamus from a storyline standpoint, because he has lost as much lately as Owens has. Owens and Sheamus both lost at the Rumble, or at Survivor Series rather, in War Games, and they both lost in tag team matches this week, albeit not being pinned, but still. One doesn't really deserve the one doesn't really deserve the opportunity over the other, aside from the fact that Owens has gotten 3 fucking title matches against Roman Reigns, albeit he was screwed out of every single one of them. But he's already gotten 3 singles matches with Roman. Sheamus has had none since Roman became champion, over 2 years ago. So I would run that back personally, if not do a triple threat, but that's just me. We had LA Knight in the ring after that, calling out Bray Wyatt. He instead got Uncle Howdy. And Uncle Howdy, it was fine, but again, he did not say anything of note. And I like Knight's approach to this whole angle, saying, listen, I'm not dealing, he didn't say this, verbatim, but basically he just said, I'm not dealing with the supernatural shit. I know Bray Wyatt's behind it. He replayed the footage from a few weeks ago when he was attacked and saw Bray Wyatt's fucking Uncle Howdy mask in the background. He knows it's Bray Wyatt under the Uncle Howdy mask. You have to be a dimwit to not realize that, he said, or nimwit or whatever. Half-witted, dimwit or whatever with the word that he used to describe the people not believing that Bray is Uncle Howdy, which maybe he will be, maybe he won't be in storyline. And that was about it. Knight walked off, going to look for Bray backstage. He did not find him. We did see Bray outside in the hallway for angles like birthday celebration backstage. We saw Bray in the aisleway talking to himself again. And then when LA Knight was looking for him backstage, he went into a dressing room, found a Bray Wyatt shirt. The lights went out. He uses his phone, which we never fucking see on these shows. These people are so fucking dumb, they don't carry their phones with them, apparently, in these segments. LA Knight was smart enough to use the flashlight on his phone and found that Bray Wyatt was standing right there in an Uncle Howdy mask. Sure enough, it was Uncle Howdy. We're supposed to believe it's 2 different people. Whatever. And then it cut right to commercial. We didn't even hear him get attacked. It literally, from a storyline standpoint, I get the appeal of cliffhangers. I get that. But this was never even addressed when they came back from commercial. At least if you're going to do a cliffhanger, you have to at least fucking... if it's not going to close the show and it's going to be in the middle of the show, you can't just do that and then go to commercial and then not mention it when you get back. We have no idea what happened to LA Knight. So, honestly, I thought the development this week on this angle was fucking dumb. It was pointless. I'm absolutely at the point, a lot like with the rest of you, that I'm ready for this rivalry to progress already. It's pretty evident they're probably waiting until the Rumble to do the first match, if the lights out match or whatever they're calling it is to be believed. Those whole reports and rumors about them trademarking a new match stipulation. It sounds fucking dumb. Maybe it'll exceed expectations. Some of the Wyatt cinematic matches have been decent. I love Firefly Funhouse, but that was also in COVID. I want to see a fucking match at this point. I didn't see Bray Wyatt come back to cut promos every single week or do this Uncle Howdy shit. I think it's intriguing, don't get me wrong. I'm not completely souring on the storyline, but at a certain point, we've reached the point where we need development. They can't be just doing the same shit every week with no real progress. If we're not getting to a match and LA Knight's not challenging to a match or vice versa, then what are we even doing here? This felt like filler for the feud for the week, and I just couldn't really bring myself to care personally. And it's a shame because I like both guys a lot. Speaking of people not caring, we got the Viking Raiders versus Legado del Fantasma's Cruz del Toro and Joaquin Wilde. Remember, Raiders returned last month attacking Legato and Hit Row before their match could get started. So this was out of retaliation for that. The Raiders already beat Hit Row on SmackDown when I was there 2 weeks ago. So Legato had their chance at, vengeance or retaliation, whatever. The match went all of a few minutes. The crowd could not have given a fuck. Hit Row came out. They still didn't care. And they attacked both Raiders and Legato to, leave both teams laying and set up next week's triple threat tag team match with Hit Row, Legato, and Raiders. So here's the thing with this. I applaud them. I applaud WWE Triple H for trying something different in the tag team division, to do something outside of the title picture. This isn't just really all that fucking interesting at all. The thing is that they're trying to get over 3 relatively new acts at once. Legato are a brand new act. They just debuted in October. I don't think they have any wins at all in tag team action. Maybe one. Maybe. I think they beat Hit Row in their debut match, and that was months ago, and that was 2 months ago. They're trying to get them over. They're trying to get Hit Row over, who just aren't over. And I like Hit Row, but people just don't give a fuck about them at all. They're trying to get Hit Row over. They just came back in August. Even the Raiders, who have been here for years, they're trying to get them over again because they have Sarah Logan as Valhalla in their corner, and their heels and their back as these dominant monster heels, whatever. So they're trying to get over all 3 teams at once, and the crowd, they don't really have an incentive to cheer for one team over the others. Yeah, Hit Row are baby faces, but they feel less over than the other 2 teams. And the problem with the match itself here with the Raiders and Legato, I get why they did it, but again, when you have 2 teams that are kind of still in the developing stages, and again, I know the Raiders have been there for a while, but they're trying to get them back over because they have not been over for a very long time. People aren't going to care. When you have a heel versus heel match, in this circumstance, people will not give a shit. So I really didn't care about this at all. I applaud their effort to set up next week's triple threat tag team match. That should be a good match. Maybe they can add the stipulation that the winners get the next tag team title shot. The Raiders have already gotten a tag team title shot against the Usos. I don't really want to see them get another. The match was good. I know they were baby faces at the time. It makes even less sense to do the match now that they're heels. Legato and Hit Row have not gotten a title shot yet. And understandably why, because they really haven't done much since being back. Hit Row, if they can bother to build them up and if they can get people to care at least a little bit about them versus the Usos, I mean, it can't be a competitive match. Hit Row don't really mean much, but as a one-off tag team title match on SmackDown one of these weeks, I'd be perfectly fine with that. Probably not at the Rumble. You can't do the matches we got this week with Owens and Riddle and then Sheamus and Butch challenging for the tag titles on Raw and SmackDown and then save the fucking Hit Row guys for the Rumble. That just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So, this was probably easily the weakest part of the show. We had a contract signing with Gunther and Ricochet signing the contract for next week's Intercontinental Championship match. This was good stuff. The New Day's Kofi and Xavier came to Ricochet's aid to ensure there were no shenanigans. I like the segment. I like the attempt to make the title mean more and the match mean more. I like that a lot. Gunther did mention he was the one who took the title from Ricochet. He was the one who has beaten Ricochet twice. He doesn't really have anything left to prove, and he's right. So it makes me worried that Gunther might lose, and maybe that's what they're going for here. They want to make you think Gunther could lose. I really fucking hope he doesn't. I could see a scenario where Braun Strowman, who was absent from this show, thankfully, because there was no real reason to have him on the show, and he's been very hot since he came back. He's been white hot as far as momentum goes. I could see a scenario where he costs, Gunther the title, for them costing Gunther a spot in the World Cup and whatever. I really hope not. I mean, Ricochet already had his run. I know he's been rebuilt up under Triple H. I think he can look good in defeat, which he always does and he always loses, but I just don't think this is the spot for him. I'm kind of even upset they're doing this match again. I'm sure it's going to be a great match, but there's other people on SmackDown I'd rather see get a shot against Gunther. Before Gunther loses the title at some point, hopefully the Sheamus at WrestleMania. Ricochet's just not that guy. So to take the belt off of Ricochet to put it right back on him 6 months later, to me, doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. I mean, listen, I don't want to see this either, but I would rather see Strowman take the belt from Gunther than Ricochet. At least Strowman, he also had a pretty bad fucking reign a couple of years ago, but he feels more over, has more momentum. He's a bigger name. Ricochet had his run. No one gave a shit because they didn't give people a reason to give a shit. And then that was it. I know, again, he's in a different spot now than he was 6 months ago with Triple H in charge, replacing Vince. I get it. But still, I would stray away from that if possible. But anyway, the segment was fine. The whole performing joke from the New Day was stupid. The subsequent six-man tag team match was good. Ricochet and New Day beating Imperium with Ricochet pinning Kaiser. I think not Vinci, and definitely not Gunther, to give him that minor momentum boost going into next week. This was effective stuff. Enjoyed that. We were supposed to get Shayna Baszler against Shotzi on the show, but they shot an angle before the show and aired it on .com on their YouTube channel, whatever. It was a WWE digital exclusive, where Ronda and Shayna attacked Shotzi in the parking lot, and it was shown in the background of a Legato interview, I think with Kayla Braxton outside or whoever. So I'm not exactly sure if Shotzi is actually hurt or if they just shot this angle because they wanted to change the match. Shotzi did not come out here. Raquel came out during the match to cost them the tag team win in the match we got instead with Ronda and Shayna versus Liv and Tegan. I gotta be honest though, not to say this was any sort of instant classic, but I enjoyed this match than I probably would have more than Shayna and Shotzi. I was there for Shayna and Shotzi a few weeks ago. It was a fine match. This was a fine match, but I really just don't care about Shotzi being in the title picture anymore. She was decisively defeated at Survivor Series. You move on. I know they're using her as kind of like they're bridging the gap between... They probably would have had Shotzi beat Shayna if they did the match. They're just bridging the gap for the Royal Rumble for Raquel to face Ronda Rousey. So the baby faces didn't win here. Liv Morgan pinned Shayna after Tegan ran in when the referee wasn't looking because he was distracted with Ronda and with Raquel. Tegan ran in, hit her shiniest wizard finish, and Liv picked up the win for the team. So they're clearly headed towards Ronda and Raquel for the Rumble, and that's fine. Raquel's not interesting. I'm sure the match will be good because their first two matches on SmackDown earlier this year were good. But she's just not interesting as babyface. Ronda's fucking promos. I mean, listen, she's better off as a heel. That much is certain. But, like, her promos as of late, like, a lot of these lines that she's using, I don't know if they're writing him for her, if she's coming up with these herself. They're putrid. They are horrid. So, I will say, though, the women winning here, Liv and Tegan, earned them, apparently was enough to earn them a women's tag team title shot. They're facing Damage Controls, Dakota Kai and Io Sky, next Friday on SmackDown for the tag team titles. So, that really just kind of goes to show how much of a division, or how much not a division, I guess, that's a really poor way of wording it, lack thereof, of a division they have in WWE with the women's tag team scene. They really only have, I mean, I guess Ronda and Shayna are a team. Yeah, I guess. Liv and Tegan. They have Shotzi and Raquel to an extent. Damage Control, who barely ever defend the fucking things. And Asuka and Alexa when they bother to team up. And that's really about it. Those are 5 teams, which I guess is enough, but they don't team consistently enough and make these storylines matter to the point where I care. So, fuck it, just do the match next week. If they do a title change, they do a title change. I will mention this, I did like that they gave a profile piece, a profile package to Tegan Knox. Because they just kind of had her run out there last week expecting people to know who she is. I was excited. I'm a big Tegan Knox fan. I love Tegan Knox. The problem is a majority of the audience is not going to know who this woman is. Hence why there was no reaction when she came out last week. I mean, it really isn't no surprise. I think I mentioned this in the audio review last week, but she was on the main roster for a cup of coffee last year on SmackDown with Shotzi. She won a majority of her matches, but granted, they did not wrestle a whole lot. She got fired in November. She never made her debut on Raw. And she was in NXT for a while, but a lot of people of the current main roster audience probably were not watching NXT, and she was also gone for a year. And she was barely even on NXT because she was hurt a lot, so I don't blame people for not knowing her or caring yet. Hopefully she can get over time. They brought a lot of people, a lot of women in, a lot of men as well, a lot of people in. So it's hard to get over a lot of people at once, but I appreciate the attempt, and I thought the package was well done, kind of chronicling her injuries and return to the company and how she should be, gain sympathy for Tegan Knox, because, she has a great story, and she's very easy to root for, and she's very good as well, so I was happy to see they did that. Like I said, with Kurt Angle, they showed him backstage throughout the show, celebrating his birthday. Yesterday was his actual birthday, I wasn't sure, but they were in Pittsburgh, I believe, and it was his actual birthday. Maybe they weren't in Pittsburgh, I thought they were, I could be wrong. But, they had the segments throughout the show, and he was seen the entire time with Gable Steveson, who we have not seen on WWE TV, I don't think, since WrestleMania. They signed the guy over a year ago. He reported to the PC soon after, and he was drafted to Raw, if you remember. So it was funny because like we see him on the show, and Strowman's like, "Oh, we could use you here on SmackDown." I'm thinking, well, isn't he a part of the fucking Raw roster? I mean, the only other time we've seen him on TV, again, like I said, was at WrestleMania 38 earlier this year. He might have been on night 2 in the crowd or whatever, but he was definitely involved in night 1 or 2. I forgot which one. I think it was night 2. With the Raw Tag Team title match, or afterward he went after Gable. So between what we got on this show and what we saw at Mania, clearly his first opponent upon making his in-ring debut on the main roster down the road will be against Chad Gable. There were reports, I forgot to mention as well, since WrestleMania that he hasn't been seen at the PC, or he's slowing down as far as like he's not there as much, or his development slowing down, or he wanted to go back to wrestling. I forgot exactly what the report said, but it sounded like bullshit. They were not giving up on Gable Steveson. I mean, listen, it's happened before where they sign people for a lot of money, make a big stink about it, look no further than fucking Cain Velasquez, and then we just don't see those people anymore. But, I mean, listen, his brother's there. Damon Kemp is his real-life brother, and nothing concrete really indicated to me that that was the case, so I'm glad he's sticking around. He will need a personality transplant, though. I mean, from what I saw on this fucking show, I'm sure the guy is talented in the ring. He has that amateur wrestling background. He's an Olympic gold medalist. I'm sure he's good. The problem is that he has no fucking personality at all. And seeing him interact with Kurt, with Braun, among others, backstage, I mean, he was living life outside in the ring when he was, dousing Alpha Academy with the fucking milk truck, which was entertaining enough. We've seen the angle a bunch. We've seen that a bunch in WWE. It's like the fucking ring spot. You see it 7 or 8 times. It's been 3 or 4, let's be honest, but you see it once, you've seen it every time. It's never going to beat the original. But it was still fun. It was a harmless segment. Excuse me. But the few times we saw him out there, aside from the milk stuff, he had like this stone-faced look on his face. So, I don't know. Maybe he'll start to show more of a personality. Maybe he was nervous. It was only his second time on the show, on any WWE show, and as far as in this capacity. So we'll soon see. We'll see if he makes his in-ring debut soon. If they have him at WrestleMania, maybe he faces Chad Gable at WrestleMania. I think that'd be a great spot for him there. For Chad Gable. I mean, in Gable Steveson as well, but specifically Chad Gable. So time will tell. But the final segment, basically, I just kind of summed it up, was fine. Alpha Academy came out. We saw another Alpha Academy Kurt Angle interaction like we did earlier this year. They just, completely drowned these guys with the milk truck, and that was about it. So it was a fun way to go off the show. Nothing groundbreaking. It didn't break the internet. Nothing really of storyline significance, but they did establish an alliance between Angle and Steveson, and maybe we see Angle back on TV, kind of passing the torch to Steveson when he pops back up on TV at some point. Not in a match, obviously, but I don't know if he manages him or he just gives him tips and we see him, loosely aligned at some point down the road. Who knows? I still think Gable and Angle would have been great, but whatever. We got Angle's son on this show, I forgot to mention as well, Jason Jordan, making his return to WWE TV. We see him a lot in the backstage brawls, but we saw him outright acknowledge this week in his interaction with Kurt backstage. Remember, he's his son. He was his son from 5 years ago, so I thought that was great they acknowledged that. And that was about it for SmackDown. So like I said, not exactly the hottest ending to the show, but it was fun enough. It was a decent show. And I think they're kind of holding out for next week between Roman's return, the potential Sami Zayn makeover, and a possible Bloodline beatdown of Sami Zayn. Damage Control versus Morgan and Knox for the women's tag team titles. And Gunther versus Ricochet for the Intercontinental Championship as well, which should be great. So I'm looking forward to that show in Chicago. It's going to be a live show. I don't think, like I said, and I could be wrong, I don't think they're live on the 23rd due to the holiday, but they will be back live on the 30th in 3 weeks with John Cena appearing. So a lot of cool stuff to look forward to in the remainder of the year for this blue brand for SmackDown, and I look forward to it myself. Thank you guys for checking out my review. I appreciate it. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. And we should have a SmackDown Lowdown review. Almost called it Talking Smack again. But SmackDown Lowdown review coming up soon, either today or tomorrow. Tales from the Territories as well. If you haven't already, check out my interview before Deadline today, NXT Deadline tonight on Peacock. Got my interview, the #1 contender, Apollo Crews, up right now in video form, audio form on WrestleRant Radio, and in article form over on DailyDDT.com. Have an awesome one, guys. I'm Graham G. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.